I thought I had it all: a stable job, good friends, and a rock-solid marriage. But one whispered conversation, a single sentence I overheard, shattered my entire world, revealing a betrayal so deep it still makes my blood run cold. What followed was a nightmare of lies, manipulation, and the kind of family drama you only see in bad movies. It all started about 8 months ago. I'm Lily, 29, and for 5 years, I was married to David. We met in college. He had this easy charm, always knew the right thing to say to make you feel like you were the only person in the room. He wasn't big on grand gestures, but he seemed dependable, or so I believed. Our relationship had always leaned a little one-sided, but I just chalked it up to our different personalities. I'm more the quiet, thoughtful type. David? He's assertive. He liked being in control. Back then, I had no idea just how deep that really went. I work in publishing, mostly from home, while David's in real estate. His hours were all over the place, and for a while, that worked for us. It gave me space to focus. We had our rhythm. But then, the little red flags started popping up. He was coming home late more often, brushing off my questions with vague answers. He was always on edge, short-tempered over the smallest things. I remember one night, I just asked if he wanted to plan something for our anniversary, and he sighed like I just asked him to climb Mount Everest. It was exhausting. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Wednesday. I wasn't supposed to be home until late because of a downtown meeting, but it got canceled last minute. I thought, perfect. I'll surprise David. Maybe grab some takeout, have a spontaneous dinner. We hadn't really connected in weeks, and honestly, I missed him. I was actually smiling as I unlocked the front door. The house was quiet, except for a low hum. David's voice. It was coming from his study. The door cracked open. I froze the moment I heard him say it. She's nothing special, just easy to control. I could do so much better. There was a pause, then laughter. Another voice, a man I didn't recognize, asked, "Then why settle?" David chuckled. "I don't know. Convenience, I guess. She won't leave. She doesn't have it in her." I didn't breathe. I didn't cry. I just stood there, completely still, like a statue, while my heart slowly shattered into a million pieces. I backed away, quietly slipped out the front door, and drove straight to my sister Mia's apartment. I didn't say a word, just showed up at her door, eyes wide, numb. She took one look at me and pulled me inside. I didn't go home that night or the next. I stayed with Mia for a few days, just trying to make sense of what I'd heard. The betrayal was one thing, but the way he said it, like I was some disposable object, that's what truly broke me. I kept thinking back to all the times I made excuses for him, all the times I thought his distance was my fault. How blind had I been? I didn't confront him right away. I needed time, space. Mia, being Mia, wanted me to torch the house. Kidding mostly, but I wasn't ready for that kind of confrontation. Not yet. Instead, I got quiet. I observed. I listened. I still had access to our shared bank account. And when I checked the statements, well, let's just say some interesting charges started showing up. Dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel stay downtown. David was careful, but not careful enough. He never imagined I'd check. He never imagined I'd leave. When I finally called him, 3 days later, I told him I was taking some time for myself. He didn't argue, just said, "Okay, take all the time you need," like he was doing me a favor. No apology, no concern, nothing. That was when I knew for sure. He didn't care. He never really did. 3 months passed. I filed for separation. Quietly moved most of my things out, with Mia and a couple of friends helping. I cut off contact except for email. David didn't even seem to notice. I think he assumed I'd just disappear, like some obedient little puppy. Then, out of nowhere, he showed up at my door. He looked different, tired, haggard even. He asked to come in, said he'd made a mistake, said he'd been going through a phase under a lot of pressure, and didn't mean anything he said. I didn't say much, just stood in the doorway, watching him squirm. He even cried. Actual tears. It might have meant something if I hadn't seen those hotel receipts, if I hadn't heard his voice so smug, so dismissive, like I was some piece of furniture he regretted buying. I didn't let him in. That should have been the end of it. But it was just the beginning, because the moment I stood up to him, David decided to involve his family. And let me tell you, his mother, Linda, is a character. Imagine someone who thinks the world owes her son everything because he was the star of his high school football team 20 years ago. She always treated me like I was lucky to have him. At our wedding, she actually said into the mic during the toast, "I hope Lily learns to keep up with David. He's got a big future." Yep, that kind of person. After I refused to let David back in, Linda started calling. First, it was polite. "Sweetheart, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. David loves you." Then it turned condescending. "You're overreacting. All men say stupid things. You need to grow up." And then the guilt tripping began. "You're breaking up the family. Do you think your sister will take care of you forever? You don't even have kids. What future do you have?" At first, I ignored her, but the calls didn't stop. She even came to Mia's building once, unannounced, demanding to speak with me. I wasn't home, thank God, but Mia let her have it. I still laugh thinking about it. Mia, standing there in sweatpants, arms crossed, saying, "Lily's not a doormat just because you raised one." Linda left in a huff, of course. But that wasn't the end. Then came the text from David's sister, Amanda. We used to be close, or so I thought. But apparently, blood is thicker than betrayal. She told me I was ruining David's life, that I'd humiliated him, that he was finally starting to open up, and I'd crushed him by leaving. I couldn't believe it. I started to wonder if I'd been crazy all along, if I'd really blown things out of proportion. But then I'd remember his voice on that call. "She's nothing special." And I'd remember how none of them cared until he was inconvenienced. The tipping point came 2 weeks ago. I got a letter from David. Not a text, not an email. A handwritten letter, 6 pages long. It was surreal. He wrote about how he missed our routine, our dinners, our Sunday walks. He said he was willing to forgive me if I came home. He actually wrote that. Forgive me. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. He said he talked to a therapist once, and that was proof he was working on himself. And the kicker? He said his family was willing to welcome me back, but only if I promised to stop being so difficult. I read it 3 times, stunned. I wasn't sure if I should laugh or scream, but it hit me. He still didn't get it. None of them did. They thought I'd just roll over and play house again like nothing ever happened. Like I should be grateful to be accepted back into their little club. That was when I decided. It was time for them to learn who they were really dealing with. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to explain myself one more time. No, I was going to play the long game. Quiet, strategic, precise. The first move came when I picked up the phone and called David's boss. Now, I wasn't the kind of person to meddle in someone's job. I've always believed in keeping things professional and personal separate. But something about that letter, it flipped a switch in me. The arrogance, the assumption that I'd been the problem. The line that got me the most was, "I'll give you another chance if you're willing to behave." Behave. That wasn't the language of someone trying to heal a relationship. That was a power play. And for the first time in a long time, I realized just how much of my life I'd spent being small, shrinking myself down so David could feel bigger, being agreeable so his mother wouldn't call me moody, pretending I didn't hear their jabs over dinner, their little comments about how I wasn't ambitious enough or outgoing like David's exes. So no, I didn't feel bad when I called his boss. I didn't do it to get him fired. That wasn't the point. I just asked a few questions. Innocent questions, really. I knew David worked for a boutique real estate firm, very reputation-driven. They had high-end clients, the kind who cared deeply about image. I called and asked to speak to someone in HR. Said I was considering working with one of their agents and that I'd like to know if the firm had any policies in place about their agents speaking disparagingly about clients or spouses in public. Hypothetically, I said, What if I overheard one of your agents say something truly awful about his wife on speakerphone? Would that concern you?" The woman paused. I could hear her typing. "Well, yes, that would be highly inappropriate," she said slowly. "Do you have a name?" I told her I didn't feel comfortable saying that. I just wanted to know their policy. She explained they take professional conduct seriously and thanked me for calling. I hung up with a strange calm in my chest. I didn't need to burn his world down. I just needed to make him sweat. Let him feel the pressure. Feel out of control for once. And apparently it worked, because the next day, I got a voicemail from David. His voice was tight, almost panicked. "Hey, Lily. Weird thing happened today. Someone from HR said they got a complaint about me. Not sure what that's about, but if it was you, can you just call me? I think we need to talk." I didn't respond. 2 days later, Amanda texted me. "What did you do?" David's on edge and Mom's furious. "You're seriously going too far." That made me laugh out loud. Going too far? I hadn't even started. But then the calls started again. Not from David this time. It was Linda. She left a voicemail so long I had to delete it halfway through. She accused me of sabotaging her son's future, of playing games like a bitter little girl. And then she ended it with, "You always were unstable. David tried to save you." That part got to me. Not because I believed it, but because I realized something. This was never just about David. It was about control. Power. This entire family had created this illusion of David as some perfect golden child, and anything that threatened that image, me, my independence, my silence, had to be destroyed. That's when I remembered something important. David and I had a shared storage unit downtown. Mostly it held his stuff, old sports trophies, childhood books, and boxes of files he never got around to digitizing. But there were a few things in there with my name on them. Old legal documents, photos, journals. So I went to the unit. And that's where I found something that shifted everything. I was sorting through the boxes labeled with my name when I found a small, unmarked envelope. It was tucked between old notebooks, ones I'd filled with story ideas when I was still dreaming of writing a novel. Inside the envelope were several folded-up receipts. At first, I thought they were just old credit card slips. But as I opened them, my hands went cold. They weren't just receipts. They were copies of charges I hadn't seen on our shared bank account. Restaurant bills, hotel stays, jewelry, spa visits, all in another city, 2 hours away. The name on the receipts, Samantha D. I didn't know a Samantha, but judging by the dates, this Samantha had been around for over a year. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The late nights, the indifference, the way he looked at me like I was in the way. He hadn't just been venting to a friend on the phone. He'd been building a double life with someone else. And he'd been careful enough to keep her out of the shared accounts, but careless enough to store the proof where I could find it. I sat on the cold cement floor of the storage unit and stared at those receipts for a long time. Not crying, not even shaking, just thinking. And that's when my revenge plan evolved. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to storm his office or post about him online. No, I was going to dismantle him the same way he tried to dismantle me. Silently, strategically, piece by piece. I started gathering everything. Photos, receipts, screenshots. I compiled it all into a neat little file. Organized, dated, stamped. Then I contacted an old friend from college, Ella, who now works as a freelance journalist. I didn't give her everything, just enough. A whisper, a tip about a real estate agent who might be hiding more than a few secrets. She said she'd look into it. In the meantime, I booked an appointment with a divorce lawyer. A real one this time. No mediation, no compromise. And just when I thought I had control of the situation, I got a message from Mia. "Hey, call me now. It's about Mom and Dad." That's when the second storm hit. Because apparently, David had contacted my parents behind my back. And what he told them, that I'd had a breakdown, that I was unstable, that I'd abandoned him without warning and was trying to ruin his life out of spite. He said he was worried for my safety and that he thought my family should step in before it's too late. And to my horror, they believed him. Not entirely. But enough. Enough that when I showed up to talk to them, they looked at me like I was fragile glass. My dad asked gently if I maybe misheard what David said on the phone that day. My mom asked if I was still taking my vitamins like I was 5 years old. And when I tried to show them the receipts, my mom actually said, "Are you sure those aren't forged?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I left. I walked out of that house shaking, not from sadness, but from a fire rising in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. They didn't believe me. They didn't believe me. And David? He knew they wouldn't. He knew exactly how to twist the narrative, knew that my quiet, private nature could be used against me. But he forgot one thing. I'm quiet, but I'm not weak. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I drove around for a while with no destination, the city lights blurring through the windshield as my thoughts raced. I wasn't crying, not exactly, but there was this crushing pressure in my chest like I was holding my breath without realizing it. I ended up back at Mia's, my key shaking in my hand as I opened the door. She was already waiting, barefoot, arms crossed, wearing one of my old hoodies. She didn't ask what happened. She just handed me a mug of tea and said, "We're going to fix this." That sentence shouldn't have made me tear up, but it did. Because for weeks, I'd been bracing myself alone, and suddenly I wasn't. The next morning, I decided to stop playing defense. First, I wrote a letter. Not to David, to my parents. A long, detailed letter with everything laid out. The phone call I overheard. The receipts I found in the storage unit. The voicemail from Linda. The manipulation. I wrote plainly and carefully, no drama, no poor me, just facts. Evidence. My story. I included copies of the receipts and even screenshots of texts from Amanda and Linda. Then I printed it all, sealed it in an envelope, and mailed it. Not just to their house, but to my mom's office and my dad's P.O. box. I wanted to be sure they couldn't ignore it or pretend they never saw it. No more letting David own the narrative. But even then, I knew this wasn't just about setting the record straight. This was about accountability. And not just his. Mine too. Because I had let things slide for too long. Not just with David, but with my family. I had been quiet, patient, accommodating. I learned somewhere along the way that being the easy one kept the peace. But I wasn't that person anymore. A few days passed. Then my mom called. She didn't apologize, not really. She just said, "I read your letter." That was it. A pause. Then, "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I almost laughed. The question was so simple, so naive, that I didn't even know how to answer. I think I mumbled something like, "I wasn't sure you'd believe me." She got quiet after that. Said she needed time. Said she didn't know what to think. I said, "Okay," and hung up. That evening, Mia and I were in the kitchen when I got the next message. It was a photo from an unknown number. At first, I couldn't tell what it was, just a blurry image of papers scattered on a desk. Then another photo came in, this time clearer. It was a screenshot of a draft email from David to a legal contact. The subject line, "Urgent, confidential settlement terms." I stared at it. Another photo came through. This one showed a bullet point list. At the top, in bold letters, non-disclosure clause. No public statements. Return of personal property. And then the final line. In exchange, client agreed not to pursue any legal claims. I felt cold all over. This wasn't just a cringing husband trying to save face anymore. This was a calculated attempt to shut me up. And somehow, someone wanted me to know. I stared at the number. No name, just digits. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. For the rest of the night, I sat with that feeling in my gut. That twisted, heavy certainty that something bigger was happening behind my back. David wasn't scared. He was cornered, and he was preparing for a counterattack. The next morning, I got a call from a lawyer. Not mine, David's. She was polite, almost apologetic. Said she wanted to extend an offer to resolve things amicably. I asked what that meant, and she said David was prepared to offer a generous financial settlement, provided certain boundaries are respected. Boundaries, I said. You mean silence? She hesitated. Confidentiality for both parties. That was the moment I realized David was terrified. Terrified of the truth getting out. Of people learning who he really was. Not just his family, but his clients, his firm, the image he'd built so carefully over the years. He wasn't worried about me leaving. He was worried about me talking. I told her I'd consider it. Then I called Ella. I think I'm ready. I told her. I want to share the story. Ella was cautious. She asked me if I was sure, reminded me what that might mean for my privacy. But I was done hiding. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense anymore. I didn't want to ruin his life. I wanted to reclaim mine. I wanted the version of me that existed before David, before Linda, before all of it, before I started defining myself by what other people needed me to be. We agreed to meet the next day. Ella said she'd bring a recorder and a list of questions. She wasn't going to publish anything without my approval, but she wanted to get the story down just in case. But later that night, just as I was starting to feel strong again, something happened that nearly broke me. Mia and I had gone to bed early. Around midnight, there was a knock at the door. At first, we thought it was just a neighbor. But then came the voice. It was Linda. "Lily," she called out. "I know you're in there. We need to talk." I froze. Mia jumped up, marched to the door, and looked through the peephole. Then she turned to me and mouthed, "She's not alone." There were at least 2 others outside, figures in the shadows. One of them we assumed was Amanda. Mia flipped the lock, but didn't open the door. "You need to leave," she said, her voice firm but controlled. "Please," Linda said. "This has gone far enough. We just want to talk." "No," I said, loud enough to be heard. "We're done talking." There was silence. Then Linda's voice turned cold. "You think you're strong now, don't you? You think people are going to believe your little sob story?" I didn't answer. "Let me remind you," she said. "You were nothing before David. We gave you everything, and we can take it all back." That last line hit like ice water. Mia lost it. "You're lucky there's a door between us," she snapped. "Get off our porch before I call the police." There was some muttering, a sound like shuffling feet, then silence. They were gone, but something about it didn't sit right. That tone in Linda's voice, that threat. I felt something shift in me again. Not fear exactly, just clarity. This wasn't going to be a quiet ending. This was war. And I hadn't even played my best card yet. Because there was one person left who hadn't heard the truth, David's firm. Not just HR, but the partners. And I had a way in. After that night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window until the sun came up, heart pounding, staring at the empty street. Mia was furious. She paced around the apartment, muttering things like, "That woman needs to be institutionalized, and one more knock on that door, and I'm getting a restraining order." But me? I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused, clear. For months, I let them make me feel small. They twisted the story, turned my family against me, treated me like a disposable object. But now, I had something more powerful than any insult or intimidation. The truth. And it was time to let it speak. Remember how I said I had a way into David's firm? Turns out, one of the partners, Mark, was an old client of my publishing company. We worked together a few years ago on a promotional book his wife was writing. It was a cookbook, actually. Beautiful photography, high-end recipes, very glossy. We'd stayed in touch, casually, the way people do when they genuinely like each other but live in different professional worlds. I sent him a message. Nothing dramatic. Just, "Hi Mark, I hope you're well. I have some information regarding one of your agents that you may want to be aware of, especially given your firm's reputation. Let me know if you're available for a quick call. Lily." He responded within the hour. "Give me 10 minutes. That call was the most composed I've ever been in my life. I told him everything. The hotel receipts, the manipulation, the phone call I overheard. I emphasized that this wasn't a personal vendetta. I wasn't asking for David to be punished. I simply thought they should be aware of the kind of man representing their firm, especially when some of those business dinners listed on the receipts had been paid for with a company card. There was a long silence on the line. Then Mark sighed and said, I had a feeling. He thanked me, said he'd look into it quietly, that I wouldn't hear from him again, but that I'd likely see the results. And true to his word, I never heard back. But 2 weeks later, David's profile disappeared from the firm's website. Just gone. No farewell post. No, moving on to new opportunities. Erased. And that wasn't all. Ella and I published the story. We didn't name him outright, but the details were unmistakable for anyone who knew him. The piece was framed around the broader issue of emotional manipulation and control in marriages. How abuse isn't always bruises or screaming matches. Sometimes it's whispered dismissals, financial control, or rewriting someone's reality until they don't recognize themselves anymore. It was raw, but it was honest. The story blew up. Not viral, but enough. It got picked up by a few relationship blogs, then a podcast. I didn't expect the messages that followed. Hundreds of women writing in, sharing their own stories, thanking me for making them feel seen. I cried reading them all. All that pain I'd been holding, suddenly it wasn't just mine. It meant something. David, meanwhile, tried to contact me 3 times. First through email, saying I'd gone too far. Then through a mutual friend, claiming he was devastated by how I portrayed him. And finally, he showed up again at Mia's. This time during the day. I didn't answer the door, but Mia did. I still don't know exactly what she said to him out there on the porch, but he left with a look on his face like he'd been hit by a truck. I haven't seen him since. As for his family, Linda went quiet after she realized the public was no longer on her side. Amanda blocked me. My parents? Well, they're still trying to wrap their heads around it all. My mom called a few weeks ago, said she didn't realize how bad it had been and that she was sorry for doubting me. It wasn't the perfect apology, but it was something. And me? I moved out of Mia's place and got a little 1-bedroom on the other side of the city. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I bought a tiny espresso machine and a bookshelf I assembled by hand. I started writing again. Not just stories for clients, but my stories. My voice. I even finished that novel I started years ago. People always think revenge is about destruction, blowing up someone's life, watching them suffer. But for me, revenge was quieter. It was reclaiming the pieces of myself he tried to erase. It was telling the truth. It was refusing to disappear, even when they begged me to. Especially when they begged me to. David thought I was easy to control. He was right about one thing. I'm nothing special. I'm just free, and that's more than he'll ever be.